It has been quite a week when it comes to freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and yes, the freedom to purchase what you want to purchase that is legal to purchase. Yes, a lot of crazy stuff happening here recently, and I wanted to give people a quick update because I really do think that this whole situation is very important. I do feel like we are gaining ground. I think that there is responses happening, and that's a good thing. But I think the thing that excites me the most is that this is sort of one of those situations where this is the early stages of censorship that's happening, and typically those stages include just things that are inappropriate, that nobody wants to fight for. And as I've said before, it's always a slippery slope when you have situations like this where groups are essentially forcing companies to not be able to sell things that are legal just because they're inappropriate, because eventually down the line, they'll start to censor things that are, yes, just possibly slightly violent or just, tackling tough subjects and whatnot that just offends people that are very easily offended. And I think a lot of people are responding to this whole situation regarding Steam specifically and itch.io because they've seen this for the longest time with payment processors attacking Japan, going to Japanese companies and telling them what they can and cannot sell. And they don't want to see that anywhere else. They don't want to see it global. They don't want to see it in the United States. To give people a quick refresher and yes, a nutshell to those that are new to this whole situation, because this is important for people to understand before we get into plans of actions, what's happening, what people are doing in order to fight back against this, and really my own opinion on where people should focus. But yes, essentially what happened is on Steam, a bunch of games were taken down. Yes, these games were adult in nature, but that's not the point. They're adult in nature, but the key thing is they're legal. Steam has always had sort of this stance where if it's legal, we'll have it on the platform. You can sell it and people can buy it. Again, it's your money. It's legal. What's wrong with this? At the same time, yes, they updated their policy to state that, yes, games being put on the platform have to not only follow all their guidelines, be legal and all that kind of stuff, but additionally, it cannot violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors and related card networks and banks. Interesting. Again, it can be legal, but it has to follow guidelines by payment processors. That makes sense. But anyways, yes, later on, they did also reply to a lot of journalists asking them about the situation, to which Steam replied, "We were recently notified that certain games on Steam may violate the rules and standards set forth by our payment processors and their related card networks and banks. As a result, we are retiring those games from being sold on Steam Store because loss of payment methods would prevent customers from being able to purchase other titles and game content on Steam." Again, like I said before, a lot of people are going to respond to this saying, it's adult games, they're inappropriate, they're just violent or whatever. But that's a slippery slope because we're talking about a group that is currently kind of pushing this whole thing, essentially being a group that has seen a lot of things like GTA and whatnot as being too much. And again, why I talk about this right now is because this is the first point to a later problem. And if you are a big anime fan, visual novel fan, you'll know that a lot of the stories that Japan tells is very, in a lot of cases, very inappropriate. They're very inappropriate to people like this. They're very violent. In a lot of cases, they're tackling very tough subjects. It's exactly why I got into anime in general. I love they held nothing back. They told uncomfortable stories, stories that really messed with you, stories that are very intriguing and very thought-provoking. I mean, one that I cover a lot on this particular channel is, of course, Mushoku Tensei. Mushoku Tensei is definitely one of those ones that groups like this would be very upset about. Anyways, the group that was behind this whole push was a group called Collective Shout. In their own words, they said, "We raised our objection to inappropriate things on Steam for months, and they ignored us for months." By the way, massive W to Steam. Again, I think that there's an incorrect thought process that a lot of people have right now to attack Steam for this whole situation. It's not really Steam's fault right now. But they said no. They contacted Steam and they said no. Then they said, "We approached payment processors because Steam did not respond to us. They wouldn't take it down from the store, so we went to the person that literally holds their wallet." And this is the key problem at this whole situation. They continue, "We called on itch.io to remove inappropriate stuff, and we argued normalized violence and abuse of women. Itch.io made the decision to remove all not safe for work content. Our objections were to content that involved, inappropriate acts against women." Now, here's a key thing. They're saying here that all they did was contact itch.io. And this, again, is important because they went to Steam first. Steam bent the knee because, again, they're going after their wallet. And now all they have to do is go to other companies and say, "We'll do the same to you." They literally went to itch.io and they told itch.io, "Look at Steam. We'll do the same thing. Are you ready for that?" And itch.io said, "Hell no, we can't do that. We can't do that. And so they basically frantically took everything down. Now, like I said before, I'm happy to see that people are responding to this very positively. People are taking action right now. Though I will say that a lot of these actions are not going to see much for the future. A lot of the actions that people are taking right now, I think, are kind of in response to the fact that they just assume that governments and whatnot are not going to listen to them. But the first initiative that I seen was Operation Fight Fire with Fire. A lot of people are doing the same exact thing, where they're all contacting Visa, just like Collective Shout did. Essentially, what Collective Shout did was contacted the payment processors with a flood of calls and emails. They just got a whole bunch of angry women together. There's probably a bunch of men too. They got a whole bunch of Karens together, and they all picked up their phones and their emails, and they sent it at the same time. They flooded Visa. And what that sort of created for the payment processor is, holy crap, it just basically pushed them to think that something was incredibly bad on that platform, and they had to respond. Why would you not respond when 1,000 Karens call you and say something is really bad over there? Payment processors don't know. They don't know what the hell is on that platform. They just go, hey, Steam, we're getting a lot of calls about this thing. Get that thing down, or we're going to have to stop doing payments over there. So people in response to this are doing the same thing to Visa. They're contacting them right now, calling them up and saying, what the hell? Stop censoring my platform. Stop taking down games. Stop being a government, basically. Stop setting your own laws. And it has been seemingly doing really well. I've seen a lot of people on social media are responding saying, yeah, they're talking about how they're getting flooded with calls. They're like trying to figure out what's going on. It's seemingly working. Now, the unfortunate thing is that a lot of the responses are pretty rote. They're pretty copy-paste, which is to be expected. They're not going to personalize their responses to everybody, but it does sort of show that, one, they made this template, thus it means that they are reacting to a lot of flooded stuff coming in. But two, this is probably something they're familiar with. They said, thank you for reaching out and sharing your perspective. As a global company, we follow the laws and regulations everywhere we do business. Apparently not, because you're doing, what's it called? Tortious interference with the contract? Yeah, I think that's tortious interference. Hold on a second. So you're saying when Collective Shout contacted you and you decided to stop doing payment processing for Steam in response to that, despite the fact that Steam is legally allowed to sell that item of another person's making, that sounds like tortious interference. I'm not a lawyer, but in my understanding of tortious interference, that sounds like, because there's a contract there. Steam has a contract with a developer to sell an item, and you're interfering with that legal contract. That sounds like tortious interference of contract to me. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I think that sounds like that. And it sucks because I would wish that Steam would actually confront that. Anyways, while we explicitly prohibit illegal activity on our network, we are equally committed to protecting legal commerce. Then put that back up on the platform. That's perfectly legal. It's legal. If a transaction is legal, our policy is to process the transaction. We do not make moral judgments on legal purchases made by customers. That sounds familiar. All the folks that have been, watching me for a long time, doesn't that sound familiar? Yeah, that's exactly what they told Yamada. They told Taro Yamada the same exact thing when he visited them back last year. Back when Taro Yamada visited the headquarters of Visa, they stated that while Visa evaluates transactions based on legal and illegal criteria, it does not make value judgments on legal content. That's just sort of a translation there. It's pretty much moral judgments. Regarding adult content, Visa has established universal standards based on age verification to prevent, obviously, exploitation of kids, and the consensual provisions. However, Visa does not set standards or make judgments on the content itself. Visa headquarters only sets standards for Visa regulations. Individual judgments are made on operational level. That's basically talk about the idea of, the headquarters here versus Japan, because again, this is a Japanese politician going to Visa. Visa's headquarters has never issued instructions prohibiting the handling of content containing specific terms or keywords, which again was a lot to do with a lot of the manga and whatnot that were being taken down in Japan. Sounds very familiar, very interesting. I'm guessing they're very familiar with this whole problem, aren't they? It almost feels like they just took the statement they gave Taro Yamada and they decided just to paste it in here. Visa does not moderate content sold by a merchant, nor do we have visibility into the specific goods or services sold when we process a transaction. And that makes sense. They're not going to be keeping track of what exactly is being sold. They don't get a receipt every time you sell. They just know what the vendor's name is, what the credit card is, who the actual owner of the card itself is, what the bank it's going to, that kind of stuff. Again, all Visa's doing is verifying the transaction. They don't hold the money and all that kind of stuff. It's to your card issuer and whatnot, your bank that you're working with, and the merchant. It just goes through Visa. They're processing it. But yet they're saying here, we don't moderate content sold by merchants. We were recently notified may violate the rules and standards set forth by our payment processors. I mean, to their credit here, it possibly wasn't Visa themselves that did this particular thing. Now, I want to be very clear here. I'm not defending Visa here, but I will acknowledge that technically, Collective Shout contacted PayPal, MasterCard, PaySafe Limited, Discover, Japan Credit Bureau, but at the same time, which one of these has a majority of payment processing? Let's ask it this way. Quiz for everybody. Which one in this list do you think would make Steam bend a knee? MasterCard or Visa? Those are the two with the massive majority of people going to the platform. This is everybody Collective Shout contacted. This is an open letter. Anyways, going back. When a legal operating merchant faces an evaluated risk of illegal activity, we required enhanced safeguards for the banks supporting those merchants. This is BS. This has nothing to do with it. But yeah, this is all to say, it looks like they're responding. And again, I want to state earlier, keep hitting them. Don't just accept this and go, well, they're not doing anything. Just keep hitting them because it's making them have to take action. I love to see there was even game developers that are going after Visa and MasterCard. Again, I think you need to contact all these individuals. They're contacting PayPal, Visa, MasterCard. These are the big ones. Those are the big ones in that list. But yeah, they're contacting them saying, okay, Visa, MasterCard, I was told by Steam that I need to follow these guidelines that were set by payment processors. What are those guidelines? What are those guidelines? It's a logical thought process. I give a massive credit here. Yeah, if I'm a creator, I'm going to have to know those policies. And again, that's the unfortunate thing that this is causing. Because now every game developer that wants to be on Steam, the biggest PC platform, is now going to be worrying about what they can and cannot put on the platform. It doesn't say on here what it is. Again, this person's contacting Visa, MasterCard saying, what are those rules and standards that Steam is talking about? This doesn't tell me anything. It's a logical concern. But yeah, apparently they responded to this individual saying, we've been getting thousands of calls. You talked to someone, who did you call? Other people accepted what I said, so don't do that. That's great stuff. That's great stuff. I do want to point out, if you are a game developer, reach out to groups like JAST, because JAST has already reached out and said, hey, if you guys had your stuff affected by this whole situation, contact us. We'd like to have you on our platform if it fits our platform. So it's a really cool option for people to have to kind of go there and see possibly if it's something they'd want to post there. And it's interesting because people ask them, hey, why are you taking this stuff on your platform? Isn't it just going to get shut down like Steam did? If they took down Steam, wouldn't they be able to take down JAST? And they said it's not their department and they can't go into specifics, but they've worked hard for years to stay out of the firing line just in case this sort of thing happened. Nothing is perfect, of course, but we're feeling all right. So they're not saying that, yeah, the payment processors can't get us, but at least it does imply the idea that, yes, they've been dealing with adult content for the longest time. They obviously seem like they have something set up. Maybe that's through an alternate payment processor or something like that. I'm not sure. But again, it is an option for a lot of people that are, developing stuff to go there. And again, I give them massive credits for that. But anyways, that all comes down to the plan of action. I did want to have this being really the more important part of this video, is really kind of discussing what I think is working is not working. Yeah, I give people a lot of credit for going after Visa and MasterCard, telling these companies, hey, just like you bent the knee to Collective Shout, bend the knee to your consumers. We have a lot more voices than those 1,000 of angry people over there that are ranting and raving about inappropriate content. And I think that might actually help. I think that might actually force Visa and MasterCard to kind of go, okay, whoa. All right, Steam, we're sorry we said that or whatever. But that doesn't set policy. That doesn't set laws. Within a year, within 2 years, what's going to happen, even if they back off, within a year or two, probably even Collective Shout themselves, some group is going to do the same exact thing. Because again, what happened here is Collective Shout showed a bug in the system. They showed a weakness in law. That because they don't want to go through the trouble of going to the government and have the government create laws, they went straight to the weak point of every business. Their pocket, their wallet. They went straight to the payment processors and they basically exploited a weakness. And now everybody's going to know how they did it. Literally, Collective Shout has put on their website a full breakdown of exactly what they did. They gave everybody the outline. And so within years, this will happen again. So while I give people massive credits and I get a massive kick out of the fact that Visa right now is having to deal with a crap ton of phone calls. And you know what? Keep doing it. I'm perfectly open to it. Hey guys, pick up the phone and keep doing it. Bug the hell out of these people. They deserve it. But unfortunately, again, it's not going to fix things in the long run. It's just going to happen again and again. I've seen people yelling at itch.io. I've seen people yelling at Steam. That's not going to fix anything either. Again, these companies have no choice because the payment processors who literally allow them to be able to function is telling them to take it down. And if they don't, they can't make transactions and they literally shut down. In my opinion, what is going to cause change is to actually contact representatives. Contact your representatives and tell them that Visa, MasterCard, payment processors, PayPal are essentially acting as government officials. And I think the big key thing here is to remember how you contact these individuals. I've already contacted mine, and unfortunately, they really quickly said they have no clue what I'm talking about. And that's usually a really bad sign that nobody is contacting the representatives when the representatives have no clue what you're talking about. Now, granted, this was a middleman. I couldn't contact the representative directly, which is very unfortunate anymore that you can't contact them directly. But I think people, especially in the US, need to contact their representatives and tell them, I don't like what's happening. And the phrasing is the most important thing possible. The way you need to confront them is specifically on the idea of questioning if they're aware that payment processors are essentially dictating what businesses can and cannot sell that are legal. That's the key word there. And you can even go in the direction of talking about recent events in the world, where political parties were weaponizing the payment processors to shut down companies that were supporting different party members. You can look into that stuff. There's a lot of it around the firearm stuff. And that really gets into the Fair Access to Banking Act that I've talked about before, that I do think has a lot in here that sort of does go in the direction I think a lot of people would want. The idea of payment processors not being able to decline service to businesses based on political actions and whatnot. It specifically gets into the idea that unless it's illegal, you cannot decline somebody from being able to make a purchase or a transaction through a company. The requirements to provide fair access to financial services, a covered bank, including a subsidiary of a covered bank, shall, except as necessary to comply with another provision of law, make each financial service the covered bank offers available to all persons in the geographical market served by the covered bank on proportionally equal terms, not deny, in coordination with or at the request of others, any person the financial service the covered bank offers. That's the key thing there. Again, collective shout can't tell you that you can't do this. And when denying the person financial services the covered bank offers, provide written justification to the person explaining the basis for the denial. They have to say, what law does it break, including any specific laws or regulation the covered bank believes is violated. That's the key thing there. They're literally saying you have to cover it, and if you don't, you have to tell them what law they're breaking. Again, with Steam, you have to say what law are they breaking. Now again, I'm not saying you have to back this bill, S401 of the 119th Congress. And there's two of them, by the way. There's also HR 987. You don't have to back these two things. I keep telling people, go do your own research. Go see if this is something you want. Read the bill, see if it's something you want. Again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I believe in the idea that this is a country of the people for the people. You have to do your part, look at this stuff, research it, contact your representatives, and if it's something you want to back it. But either way, even if you don't cover these bills, contact your representative and tell them, are you aware that payment processors are acting like government officials? They're making law. Steam is selling legal options. Steam is a platform that's selling legal stuff. Are you okay with payment processors going behind your back and making laws? That's exactly what's happening right here. The payment processors are making their own laws. Collective shout through the payment processors are making laws. Tell your representative, are you okay with that? Back during the elections, they were telling companies that they have to go out of business and they won't do transactions for them because they're backing another political candidate. Are you okay with that? Again, this is what this was pretty much initially made for. You need to word it that way. Don't get into the idea they're censoring my lewd video game. Just specifically say there's a Steam platform. It is the biggest gaming platform that many young adults are paying attention to, and they're furious that payment processors are telling them what they can and cannot sell that are legal to sell. That's the key thing. And I think that's the way to get things fixed, because I think we're at the point now where the only way to fix this and to fix it for a long time is government intervention. Because again, even if you contact Visa and you bug them for a little bit, they may tell Steam, okay, undo that, but then they're just going to do it again later on, because those aren't laws. And it's just going to take another collective shout to bug them. Anyways, to wrap things up, I am keeping an eye out again on the Japanese side of things. It looks like things kind of went quiet. Kurushita Yoshiyuki here on Twitter, he has been pretty much keeping people posted and getting very involved with a lot of things that are happening right now with Collective Shout, payment processor, and whatnot, because him on the Japanese side, along with Taro Yamada, is fighting payment processors. He notified me in the DM that they're planning on possibly having a contact with payment processors next month, so I'll keep an eye on that and get you guys updated once that comes around. But things have been crazy, and I think it's only going to get crazier until, again, some sort of legal action, some sort of governmental action kind of steps in. Because as Japan has been experiencing it for a long time, and now we're experiencing it everywhere else, this slippery slope has begun. And I think the only way that we're going to stop this is, unfortunately, government interaction. And again, they're currently doing it. They have an entire political group that has been created through Taro Yamada and a lot of individuals across the board. It's something in Japan that is bipartisan. Like even Yoshiyuki here and Yamada, they're on different sides of the political parties, but they're coming together for this option here. And I think that's important. And I think that's very important. But anyways, I want to give people an update on this whole situation and give my thoughts on what people should be doing going forward. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it informative. If you did, hit the like button down below. And if you like this content and you want to support the channel more, become a member of the channel. Until next time, you'll take care.